December 1942, Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea. The air smells of oil and sweat. Mechanics work under canvas tarps, cursing at engines as the tropical rain drums on the metal skins of B-25 Mitchell bombers lined up in the mud. At the far end of the airstrip, a broad-shouldered man in grease-stained khakis is half buried inside the nose of one of them, sparks flying as his acetylene torch bites into steel. His name is Paul Irvin, Pappy Gunn, 50 years old, ex-US, Navy pilot, now a civilian-turned-combat engineer for the 5th Air Force. Most men his age have retired from flying. Gunn, instead, is inventing a new kind of warplane. He wipes sweat from his brow with an oil rag and calls out to a young sergeant, "Son, hand me that 50 cal mount. We're going to turn this pretty lady into a street fighter." The crew laughs, half in disbelief. B-25 seconds are supposed to fly at 10,000 feet, dropping bombs from altitude, not skimming the ocean to strafe ships. But Pappy doesn't care what's in the manual. The war has turned personal. Somewhere in Japanese-occupied Manila, his wife and 4 children are prisoners. Every modification, every experiment, is his revenge taking shape in aluminum and fire. Inside the makeshift workshop, stripped-down bombers sit nose to nose, their glass bombardier compartments replaced with hand-welded steel plates. Where a Norden bomb sight once perched, Gunn is fitting clusters of 50-caliber Browning machine guns, 4, 6, 8 of them bristling like the snout of a mechanical beast. Empty shell casings litter the floor like brass confetti. The concept is simple but radical. Forget high-altitude precision. Fly low, fast and brutal. Strafe the enemy decks before they can fire back. Gunn's strafer will turn the hunters' tables. Outside, General George C. Kenney, commander of the U.S. 5th Air Force, watches with a skeptical smile. He's learned to trust Gunn's madness. "Pappy," he says over the rain, "if this thing doesn't fly, I'll deny ever meeting you." Gunn chuckles. "Don't worry, General. When it flies and fights, you'll want 100 more." The mechanics cheer. The first of the modified B-25 seconds is rolled out into the grey dawn, guns glinting under the jungle Sunday. No one realizes it yet, but in this muddy outpost, the very nature of aerial warfare is being rewritten. Section 2. Baptism by Fire at Buna. January 17th, 1943. Low over Buna Airfield, Papua New Guinea. Engines howl at treetop height. The air smells of cordite and burning palm. A formation of freshly modified B-25 seconds guns strafer bombers tears across the coastline at barely 200 feet. Inside one of them, First Lieutenant John Hennebury grips the control yoke, squinting through the gun smoke fogging the nose. His bombardier's seat has been replaced by ammunition boxes and gun mounts. 8. Forward firing. 50-caliber Brownings chatter like typewriters from hell, spitting tracer lines into the Japanese airfield below. "Keep it steady, John. She's walking," his co-pilot yells. Hennebury doesn't answer. He's locked in, flying through curtains of flak. The target, a row of enemy supply dumps, and parked aircraft erupts as his gunfire rips through fuel drums. The shockwave punches the belly of the plane as they pull up, smoke rolling beneath them like surf. It's the first combat test of Pappy Gunn's creation, a bomber turned gunship. From a nearby hill, observers from General Kenney's 5th Air Force watch through binoculars, slack-jawed. One of them mutters, "Christ, they're chewing that place to pieces." The Japanese had expected high-altitude raids, predictable, easy to defend with flak and fighters. What they got instead were roaring, low-flying monsters that came in too fast to stop. Gunn's modifications had turned the B-25 into something between a fighter and a torpedo bomber. It didn't just bomb, it hunted. When the planes land back at Port Moresby, the ground crews swarm them, counting bullet holes, patching torn metal, and hauling spent ammo belts by the dozens. Pappy himself stands on the tarmac, arms crossed, a grin beneath his grizzled moustache. "Well?" Kenney asks. "She flies like sin," Gunn says, "and she bites harder than the devil." Within weeks, his field modifications become the talk of the theatre. The Australians call them Pappy's Iron Dogs. Pilots volunteer to fly them, even knowing the risks of low-level runs. Gunn works around the clock, cannibalizing wrecked planes, improvising armor from scrap steel, and replacing fragile bomb sites with crude iron aiming bars. But the true test isn't over Buna. It's coming, and it will decide whether the Allies hold the skies of the Southwest Pacific or lose them to Japan's iron tide. Because soon, a massive Japanese convoy will leave Rabaul, carrying thousands of reinforcements bound for New Guinea. And when it does, Pappy Gunn's monsters will be waiting. Section 3. The Battle of the Bismarck Sea. March 2nd, 1943. Above the Bismarck Sea, north of New Guinea. At 9:30 a.m., the horizon burns with the grey smudge of exhaust. A Japanese convoy, 8 transports and 8 destroyers, steaming westward under heavy air cover. Their mission: deliver 6,900 troops from Rabaul to reinforce Leh. Their enemy, the U.S. 5th Air Force, and the restless fury of Pappy Gunn's invention. From the cockpits of the modified B-25 Mitchells, pilots can see the convoy glinting like a chain of dark beads across the turquoise water. The call crackles over the radio. Target convoy sighted. Commence attack. Captain Ed Lana's formation descends into the roar of the ocean wind. Below, Japanese gunners swivel their 25mm cannons skyward, spitting black puffs of flak. The sea heaves beneath the planes, and then the gunships open up. 14 forward firing. 50 caliber machine guns per bomber unleash a storm of fire. The sound is continuous, not bursts, but a solid metallic scream. Wooden bridges and decks of Japanese transports splinter under the barrage. Gunners are cut down before they can aim. Then comes the second act, skip bombing, a technique improvised in the Pacific, one that turns bombs into bouncing torpedoes. At 200 knots and less than 150 feet above the waves, the B-25 seconds release their ordnance. The bombs skip across the surface 1, 2, 3, and smash into the hulls of enemy ships, detonating at the waterline. Columns of flame and debris rise like pillars into the sky. An Australian Beaufighter squadron sweeps in at mast height, strafing decks to suppress anti-aircraft fire. Overhead, a 20 Havocs, another gun conversion rake destroyers, with machine gun runs so close their propellers kick up seawater. For hours, the air above the Bismarck Sea is chaos. Bombs and bullets and oil smoke blend into one infernal rhythm. The Japanese formation disintegrates under the combined assault. By nightfall, the ocean is burning. Out of 16 ships, all 8 transports are sunk. 4 destroyers follow them to the bottom. The remaining 4 limp back to Rabaul, decks on fire. Their decks littered with the wreckage of lifeboats and bodies. Of the nearly 7,000 troops aboard, barely 1,000 survived the inferno. General Kenny, watching from a reconnaissance aircraft, can scarcely believe it. "I've never seen anything like it," he says quietly. "Those damn Mitchells fight like battleships." In the command tent that night, Pappy Gunn receives the after-action reports without ceremony. He doesn't gloat. He simply nods, scratches his chin and says, "Guess she works." The Battle of the Bismarck Sea isn't just a victory, it's a revelation. The Japanese Navy, stunned by the scale of their losses, halts all large-scale reinforcement convoys to New Guinea. From then on, they travel only by night, in small, scattered barges. Gunn's impossible idea, a bomber turned into a flying gun platform, has changed the Pacific War overnight. And for the first time since his family's capture in Manila, Pappy allows himself a rare, quiet smile. Section 4. The Legacy of Fire and Ingenuity. April 1943. Port Moresby Air Depot, New Guinea. The air smells of oil, sweat, and victory. Mechanics swarm over rows of B-25 seconds and A-20 seconds, their fuselages scarred with bullet holes, each one a veteran of the Bismarck Sea. The wrecks of Japanese transports still smoulder far to the north. And for the first time in the long, grinding Pacific campaign, Allied pilots carry the scent of momentum. In the middle of it all, Pappy Gunn stands beside a stripped-down Mitchell, sleeves rolled high, cigarette clamped between his teeth. He's sketching on the wing with a piece of chalk a new modification. 6 more guns in the nose. maybe a 75mm cannon slung beneath, something that can tear through anything the Japanese still have afloat. Colonel Paul Pappy Gunn is no engineer by trade, but in Kenny's 5th Air Force, his word now carries the weight of a design bureau. Gunn's workshop has become a proving ground where necessity breeds innovation at gunpoint. Armor plate scavenged from wrecks, homemade gun mounts welded from truck parts, even jury-rigged firing triggers made from bicycle cables. Nothing is too crude, too desperate, or too dangerous if it works. At night, pilots gather around him like disciples around a campfire. He speaks in his slow Arkansas drawl, gesturing with grease-stained hands. "You don't win wars by following manuals," he tells them. "You win 'em by outthinking the other fella before he even knows what hit him." Word spreads fast through New Guinea, the Solomons, and back to the States. North American aviation engineers in California hear about Gunn's field specials. They send telegrams requesting sketches, data, anything he's learned. Within months, they're producing the B-25 hours, a factory-built version of Gunn's dream, boasting 8 forward, 50 seconds, a 75mm cannon, and reinforced armor. Soon after comes the B-25 Jules, the ultimate strafer, bristling with machine guns from nose to tail. Gunn's handprints are all over them. But the toll of war is never far. Between missions, he keeps a small photograph tucked in his flight jacket, his wife and 4 children, smiling under a Manila sky that no longer exists. Each sortie, each experiment, is one more promise that he'll make it back to them. By 1945, when the war finally turns toward Japan's defeat, that promise is fulfilled. His family is liberated from the Santo Tomas internment camp after 3 brutal years of captivity. When they reunite in Manila, Pappy weeps openly, his face lined and hardened by the jungle Sunday. After the war, Gunn's name fades quietly from the headlines, but not from the air. The principles born in his mud-streaked workshops, low-level attack, overwhelming forward firepower, and crew survivability will echo for decades. In Vietnam, the AC-47 Spooky and the AC-130 Spectre will carry his legacy forward, transforming from transports into flying fortresses of suppressive fire. Every gunship that rips through the night sky, lighting the jungle below, carries a little of Pappy Gunn's madness and genius in its DNA. Even now, in museums across the world, the modified B-25 seconds sit silent, their gun barrels still darkened by the smoke of their last run. Visitors see steel and rivets, but those who know the pilots, the engineers, the historians understand that inside every welded nose and jury-rigged gun mount lies one man's personal war. A man who turned grief into innovation, vengeance into invention, and desperation into the blueprint of modern close air support. Colonel Paul Pappy Gunn lived long enough to see the skies he'd reshaped settle into peace. His machines were crude, loud, and terrifying, but they worked, because he refused to wait for permission to build what the war demanded. In the end, his legacy wasn't just the metal beasts he forged in the jungle heat. It was the lesson they carried, that in the crucible of war, the line between survival and extinction is often drawn by a single act of imagination.